I was in the worst place of my life. It felt like I was falling off a cliff constantly. No matter what I did, Kyle, no matter how many babies I saved or how much recognition I received, I never felt like I was enough. So when I went on this healing journey, I finally was forced to confront what had happened in my childhood.
Hey, today we're joined by Chen, who is a founder and also an author. She just wrote this book that I absolutely loved. One of, I think, the best book of the year for folks that are into entrepreneurship and into actually life in general. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But I read the book and just thought I had to sit down and chat with Jane. Her story is so powerful. I'm excited to share a little bit of that with you today. So Jane, hey, welcome.
So nice to be here.
Okay, I want to dive in with one of the most one of the sentences in the book that really jumped out to me, which was you said something like, feeling powerless as a child motivated you to try to protect the most powerless children in the world. So I want to start there, but maybe it would be helpful to also say what Embrace is, yeah. and then kind of like connect to this sentence.
Sure. So Embrace started in 2007. I was a graduate school student at Stanford, and I took a design course there that was all about creating low-cost technologies for people living on less than $1 a day. And so I teamed up with a group of graduate school students, and the challenge posed to us was to build a baby incubator that cost 1% of the cost of a traditional incubator, which in the US at the time was about $20,000. So that led us to do research in places like Nepal and India and understand that incubators were not really usable in those settings because of a lack of electricity. They were expensive, but also there weren't trained caregivers to operate those, or healthcare professionals to operate those machines. And so what we ultimately came up with was a device that looked nothing like an incubator. It looked like a little sleeping bag for a baby. The technology works without constant electricity and so could be used in very remote parts of the world. It's a portable incubator called Embrace. And so at the end of Stanford, when I graduated, we decided to turn this into a social enterprise. And the team of 4 of us moved to India. I lived in India for the next 4 years, and I pretty much just gave my life to the mission. I worked around the clock. I worked nonstop. We had set a goal at that time that we wanted to save 1 million babies. And so that just became everything to me.
Yeah. And why do you think that did become
everything? And so I
you?
think that, what happened with Embrace was 10 years in, we faced so many setbacks, manufacturing, distribution, fundraising, all these things. It was way, way harder than we thought it was going to be. And so we had to shut down the company 10 years in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just absolutely devastated. It was my whole identity was wrapped up in this company. And so I felt like I had failed. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I decided that I needed to go on a healing journey. I was in the worst place of my life.
And you also had achieved a decent amount of notoriety and success.
Right.
I think young global leader, and you were a TED fellow, and
Right.
You kind of had the buzz. And is there just a question of this is why people care about me, and if that thing doesn't exist anymore, if that thing failed, I failed.
Yes. Well, it was.
Talk me through that.
Yes. I mean, that was part of it. And this comes back to your original question. And, there's many layers to this. But yeah, I think that I was kind of known for this thing. I was like the lady who saved babies or the incubator lady. And
yeah, totally.
I think having all of those accolades and that recognition made the pressure even bigger in some ways. And I cared so deeply about my work. It was all entangled, and I just didn't know where I stopped and the work began, and vice versa. It was so enmeshed, and I really, for years people would ask, "Why are you doing this? Why are you living in India? Why did you give up a lucrative? You could have got an MBA from Stanford. I could have gone down a very lucrative path, and instead I was." Making very little money doing this thing that I cared so deeply about. And probably not, I loved my work in a sense, in that it was so impactful, but I was working in ways that were so unhealthy, just to the point of total burnout. And I wasn't balanced, or, I yeah, I would say I didn't really have like joy in my life, honestly, because it was
Yeah.
all about one thing. Um, and so when I went on this healing journey, I finally was forced to confront what had happened in my childhood.
Mm.
And it was something I think I just swept under the rug for so long. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to go there. I didn't understand how it impacted me. And I just thought, oh, these are things that happened in the past. Why even address them? Right? I have my
Yeah, and like, how could they be connected to what's happening now? Like, they're
exactly. I was
yeah,
like, I
yeah,
wasn't a premature baby. I wasn't a mother. Like, I did not, I seriously just had no
yeah.
consciousness of how it was affecting me. But the truth was, I grew up with a lot of physical violence in my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was physically violent. And I finally, through this healing work and exploring the things that happened in my childhood, finally hit me that it was feeling so powerless throughout my childhood had driven me to help the most powerless people in the world. That's what had given me that fuel that I wanted to protect vulnerable children in ways that I hadn't been protected. So it had given me this intense drive, and it had become my shadow. Because no matter, well, one, my whole sense of worth was tied up in what I achieved.
Mm-hmm.
Even though what I did was like my parents were like very unhappy that I'd gone down this path of social enterprise and I wasn't making a lot of money. So I had to pave my own.
Wait, you weren't a doctor, a lawyer,
Yeah,
or an engineer, right? Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
paved my own way, but within that, I wanted to be successful, right?
Yeah.
And this pain had become my purpose, but it had also become my shadow in the sense that I worked in such unhealthy ways. And no matter what I did, Kyle, no matter how many babies I saved or how much recognition I received, I never felt like I was enough,
Mm,
right? And so I kept
mm,
pushing, 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 pushing. And
yeah.
I still never felt like I was enough. And it destroyed me. It destroyed me. At the end of that 10-year period, I had a complete mental and physical breakdown. Like I thought I was invincible up to that point. I had no idea that I could be in such a fragile state.
And what did that like? What did that physically look like for you in that fragile state?
Yeah.
And how were you trying to process it mentally?
Well, it started with kind of at the end of this decade, just getting sick constantly, right? Like my
Mm,
immunity was shot. And then once we closed the company, I was having panic attacks constantly.
mm-hmm.
I was really depressed. I was having problems sleeping. I felt like it's really hard to describe, but it felt like I was falling off a cliff constantly. Like I was just
Mm,
barely hanging on, right? Like I couldn't get through a meal sometimes or even reading a chapter in a book without feeling this sense of like real shakiness, even when nothing was
mm.
happening around me. It was terrifying.
This ties to something that became really important to you in your healing journey. This concept of the body keeps the score. And do you want to just kind of like give a Cliff's Note version of what that means and
Yes.
how the body was keeping the score for you?
Absolutely. So this is
Yep.
something I really love talking about, but there are many things that I explored in my healing journey. I literally went around the world trying every healing modality I could get my hands on. And in some ways, I kind of put the CEO hat and I was like, okay, I'm going to heal the shit out of myself. And so I had my,
Which is probably like par for the course. It's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to excel at it.
yeah.
I'm going to be the best healer.
Yes.
I'm going to heal the best.
Yes, yes. So
Totally.
that's not really how healing works, it turns out. But I had my like spreadsheet and I had all the modalities. And if something didn't work, I'd pivot and do the next thing. And I kind of took like a design thinking approach in some
Totally.
ways.
Yep.
And there were a couple of kind of really big realizations, right, that we could talk about. But let's talk about The Body Keeps the Score first. So at one point, I read The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and I learned about the science of trauma. Trauma is not something that happens in your past that you keep in the past, right? That you can just neatly tuck away. And by trauma, I mean, trauma can mean, yes, abuse, but it can also mean neglect, household dysfunction, really not getting your needs met, right? And so
Yeah.
it is very widespread. The data shows about 70% of Americans have experienced at least one traumatic event.
Yep.
But trauma is something that you carry into the present because it rewires your brain and your nervous system, right? And it affects every part of your life.
Yeah.
And so trauma can give us this heightened sense of fight or flight where we feel like we have to be hyper vigilant, where we don't feel safe in our bodies, right? Where our stress responses become heightened.
Even when in reality,
Yes,
no threat exists.
exactly.
Yep.
It's like a veteran who returns home from war and then hears a loud noise, right? And it's not dangerous, but his cortisol levels spike up, his heart rate increases, he
Yep.
starts sweating. So you start to experience all the physical symptoms as if the traumatic event of the past were happening in the present.
It's interesting. The first time I read "Body Keeps the Score" years ago, I was just like moved by how well researched the book was, and B, how powerful like that mind and body connection is. And it's interesting that you mentioned like veterans with PTSD. In some sense, you were a veteran of the war of startup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was that trauma, and then there's the deeper trauma of what had
Deeper
happened
trauma. Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
childhood. And so I didn't put those pieces together, right? And I think what trauma can also do is it disconnects you from your body in the sense that when my body was telling me to slow down or that I was exhausted, I just pushed past all of those signals and I kept going to the point of breakdown,
Yeah.
right? And so that,
Do you think this is common? Um, I guess two pieces. The first piece is do you think that it is common that folks go into starting a startup and maybe even specifically kind of like social impact related startups from a place of trauma, and then do you think it's just do you think it's normal to not realize how much you're just wrecking yourself?
yes, and there's actually, I see this in so many social entrepreneurs, especially, right?
Yeah.
There's some kind of early wounding that drives that, right? And so we do this work, we give our all to it, we burn bright, and then we burn out. And this is
Yeah.
so common, and it's something I really started understanding. There's an initiative called the Well-Being Project that works with
Yeah.
hundreds of social entrepreneurs, and they have done extensive research that shows that this is the case. And it's not just
Yeah.
social entrepreneurs. There's also a growing body of research and literature showing that founders and entrepreneurs specifically have this pattern. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that trauma also kind of gives us a greater capacity for risk taking, right? But then there's this thing within us that's like, I think Gabor Maté talks about it as wounded striving, where we don't feel enough or we put this blame on ourselves for what happened in the past and this early wounding. And so we end up wanting to like prove ourselves constantly, and we need to do more and to prove more and to be more to feel okay. But
Yeah.
of course, that never works because what you're seeking externally, if you can't find it internally, then the goalpost keeps moving and you'll never find what you're looking for.
I'm curious if you can give a little snapshot on all of the things that you tried to heal, like on
Yeah.
your healing journey. Yeah,
Yeah. And well,
you went down a lot of different paths.
yes, I tried like
Yeah,
every self-help seminar, did the psychedelics, I did the frog poisoning, I did,
yeah,
so it was a fun thing to kind of document in the book. But I would say a couple of things that I tell people were the most helpful. One is simply slowing down enough to feel your feelings. And this comes back to the mind-body connection, right? That that it is so important to process how we feel, whether that is there's anger or sadness, right? Anxiety, all of these things, fear. When we don't when we don't take the time to do that, when we suppress our emotions, they resurface more intensely, often as anxiety, depression, or burnout, right? And so when we can take the time to just slow down and feel those feelings and give them a chance to surface, that's how we work through them. Unfortunately, we live in a society that's all about escapism. So when we feel something
yep.
difficult, what do? We go to our phones. We're on social media.
Numb out. Yeah,
Right, we're substances. We'll do anything to avoid feeling those feelings because we numb out.
Yeah.
right? And so that doesn't,
I mean, it's scary to open yourself up to like, I am actually feeling
yes,
really sad right now,
totally.
really lonely, really disconnected. That is just like, it is so much easier to work more if you're running a startup. But if you're sitting
Yeah,
on the couch, it's
yeah.
easier to just scroll Instagram. You know?
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. And the crazy thing is, the research shows that an emotion lasts about 90 seconds to feel it all the way through, right? And so if we can actually just sit with that emotion for 90 seconds and allow it to move through us, then we can actually, start to process those emotions as opposed to like instantly turning to something else.
Do you have daily practices around trying to create space to feel those feelings?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I meditate every day. Every morning is the first thing I do. Sometimes, oh, a couple times a day. In my, when I'm at my best, it's for longer periods of time. And I've done
Yep.
the 10-day silent meditations and all of that. And people say to me, "Well, I don't have time to do the 10-day meditation." And I'm like, "Well, can you do 10 minutes? Can you just
Yeah.
sit in silence for 10 minutes or go on a walk or journal?" Right? But give yourself space. And I think the other thing about processing is it is helpful to be done in community, right? It's hard to do on your own. And this is where I'm so grateful to friends, teachers, healers, including Bessel, who I ended up working with, but people
Yeah.
who have created a safe enough space for me to really go there and to really go to, to go to feelings that might feel terrifying.
One thing I noticed, and maybe this is just like the arc of how the book got laid out, but one thing I noticed is there was a lot of talk of like working with professionals and some really amazing people you worked with, and in some cases very helpful, some cases less
Yeah.
helpful. Were you able to, in addition to that, process with friends that are
Yes.
just like non-professionals that are? Tell me more about that, the
Yeah,
friendship
I
angle.
think I met so many friends along this path who were on the same journey, and we all supported each other on their journey. And I think as I started to recognize things, they would, or vice versa. And so
Yeah.
we were able to talk about it, with each other, to hold space for one another. Like I feel so held by my community. And I think also being in nature and why surfing ended up being such an important part of my life was
Yeah.
both connecting to nature. Like at the end of every surf session, I will just float on my back in the water and I literally feel embraced by the ocean. It's such a beautiful feeling. And so there's that piece of it, but also connecting me to just being really present and getting me out of my head. And this is something that's been really hard for me because I'm very heady, I'm super analytical, and everything in my past was like about my intellect, right? And so learning to
Yeah.
feel what is my body telling me, listening to those signals and surfing, and for others it could be yoga or running or whatever it is, but the things that like help keep you in your body and keep you really present in the moment instead of, being so in your head. I think those are really, really useful practice.
And you, in the interesting thing you're connecting here is that a, because it's so common for us to, especially builders or high achievers of any type, to
Yeah.
be always planning, thinking about the next thing,
Yeah.
or sometimes even regretting, I should have said this or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
backwards or forwards.
Yeah.
That the physical act of doing something can be really as a powerful part of the healing, because it forces us to be here now.
That, and it allows us to be here now. And when you tune into your body, you start to tune into the wisdom of the body and the wisdom of
Okay.
emotions. I'm actually giving a workshop later today on this topic, and it's about tuning into what is my body telling me, right? Because our heart has its own intelligence center. Your gut has its own intelligence center. There are more neurons going from your gut to your brain than your brain to your gut. So that gut feeling, that is incredibly wise. It's telling you something, right?
Yeah.
Or at least telling you to pay attention. And so
Yeah.
when I'm making decisions now, I listen to what my whole body is telling me. And it's a practice I learned in something I'm part of called Conscious Leadership Group. This is called a whole body yes. So when your head, your heart, and your gut are all aligned, that's a whole body yes. right? And sometimes,
I think I get what the head is, but talk to me about the difference between the gut and the heart.
so the gut is, have you ever like had a gut feeling about someone? Like often I will experience this with a hiring decision, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So that
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
of like tap into what does that feel like in your body when you have that gut feeling? That's the gut.
Would we call that intuition,
Yeah, I
or
can
is
see
that
that.
different?
Yeah, I think that's intuition. That's intuition.
Yeah.
The heart has its own wisdom as well. So something you've really done from a place of love, like a lot of my career decisions, especially with Embrace or even what I was doing before with HIV/AIDS, they didn't make sense intellectually. This is it's like, okay, well, I'm like moving to India and all that stuff, but my heart was calling me to do it. Even writing this book, right? It really came from that place of like wanting to share the love that I've cultivated with others. And so that was like a heart-based decision. It's kind of
I mean, and the interesting thing is on that journey, that love that you cultivated. Or at least my read on it was that it really became love of self,
yeah.
and
Yes.
just and it was, I mean, there were so many moments when I'm a runner. I am a mediocre surfer at best. But I was just, running and crying, at like 5 a.m. along the Dumbo waterfront. And, it was so interesting to see all the ways that you were trying to wrap your hands around that and really connect with that
Yeah.
younger version of yourself and
Yeah.
really love her. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's what I ultimately needed. And so coming back to your question of like, what are the practices that are most helpful? The other one I would say is something called parts work, or internal family system. So this is a
Okay.
modality of therapy, which now I use in my leadership coaching practice, but it's based on the premise that we all contain a multitude of parts, of inner parts. So they're the parts that are there to protect us. So Kyle, you may have your overachiever part, your inner critic, the perfectionist, the control freak. Like I'm just making all this up, but there's all these different
Yep.
parts that like spring out to
Totally.
protect us. And then there are the parts they call exile. So these are parts that carry difficult emotions like rejection or shame or abandonment, right? And so these protectors come up so that they can prevent us from feeling these kind of very difficult feelings. And so the practice is about identifying all these different parts of yourself, right? Recognizing it, having the awareness, and then treating these parts with love and compassion. Not trying to banish them or do away with them, but just really loving them. And it's incredible how like groundbreaking this is. It sounds so simple, but in doing this, and everyone I've recommended to, it just allows you to relate to yourself differently. And so what the practice helped me see were that I had all these, different protective parts that were protecting this little girl in me that
Yeah.
never felt like I was enough or worthy, and for so long I wanted all these external things to show her, other people to show her, and of course that never worked. And
Yeah.
so I,
Even when you're successful at them, they never
even
work.
when you're successful,
Yeah.
as I said, the goal,
And even sometimes when you are successful, you're like, oh my God, it's even more
right?
depressing or
Yeah,
more
right.
infuriating
Yes.
because you're like, this didn't do it.
Yes, yeah, you get there and you're like, well, why do I still feel empty, right? Like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is really like I'm should be at the top of the world. Why do I still feel like this?
Yeah.
And so this practice helped me like identify that part of myself and just like really love that part of myself. And so that's that. You asked me about my daily practice. That is my daily practice. I have this picture of me on my desk,
Let me see.
and
Oh, there. How old are you there?
I'm 5 here.
5. Sweet
And
5-year-old Jane.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I just, have conversations with her, and it's not like those voices go, I'm not perfect. I'm not, like, it's not like your voice, those critical voices don't go away. They don't disappear, but when they arise, now I have another voice as well.
Yeah.
The inner dialogue in my head has shifted, right? And there's,
My the way that I've like as I've been doing my own work on different things, one thing I've learned is like that's probably always going to be here to some extent for me,
yeah,
whatever that thing
yeah,
is, right?
yeah,
And my hope is that I'm just like the voice is less loud,
yeah,
and it's mixed with other voices that can speak some real truth.
Exactly.
And or like the thing that I used to hold on very tightly, I'm just holding on
Yeah,
a lot looser than I used to.
totally.
Those are like the metaphors that work for me.
Yes. And when those voices come up now, instead of being like, oh, you're so annoying, whatever, you just say, thank you for protecting me, right? That's telling you you're not enough. That was to protect you so you never had to feel not enough, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
it's a very young part of ourselves. So I just say, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you've done to keep me safe. Right? And
Yeah.
now, like, yourself with a capital S can take the driver's seat. And it's almost like reparenting yourself in a way. It's the awareness to, as you said, shift the dialogue. And that's how I know I've made progress in this journey.
It's so interesting. You're talking about the reparenting. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old boy, and so I'm in the early stages of parenting. And when I finished the book, I was just like, oh my gosh, my most important job is just if I can just show these guys love and help them get to the next phase, that'd be amazing. And it really hit. There's been other different points in my life that you feel the weight of parenting, but this this book definitely was like, okay,
Yeah.
here's my role and my job, and I have the opportunity to do better than my parents did with me. They did a great job in many ways, but not perfect. Anyways, I just felt the power of a good dad, and hoping that I can live up to that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that's so many people have said that to me, and I didn't think about that with the parenting angle in mind. But like almost everyone has read the book who is a parent has said to me, it's really made me
Yeah,
think about my own parenting. And I think
yeah,
what's so important, and this applies to parenting and to our work as leaders and founders, is it all starts with you, right? And the more
yeah.
inner work we do to heal ourselves, that comes out in our relationship with everybody else.
Every of the good parenting books that I've read have all just been like, hey, look, sure, here are some
Yeah,
techniques that can be helpful, but if you're like, they're watching you. What
exactly.
life are you? What life are you living?
Exactly.
How are you treating yourself? What is a good life look like for you? And we think about that often in our family, and hope that we're
Yeah.
at least heading in the right direction there.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I've got a question that I've been wrestling with
Yeah.
for the last maybe 5-ish years,
Yeah.
4-ish years, something like that. I'm at a point in life where I'm feeling a decent amount of, I would say, more self-love and contentment than historically. And I'm loving that. It feels good. And I wonder, we talked earlier about wounded striving
Yes.
and about how that drives so many entrepreneurs. I wonder, is there something that is the healed striving a thing? Is it possible to be, still want to build a kick-ass company
Yeah.
and really perform at the top of your game and your craft, while or do you lose your edge when you do the work?
Yeah. I love this question. This is so good.
Yeah.
And I think you had asked me earlier, kind of like, what's the difference between kind of healthy striving and unhealthy, right? And so I think it gets into all of this. So I think when we're doing things from a place of purpose, it comes from that heart center, from a place of love and joy and like wanting to do the thing. I think when it becomes unhealthy is when you get into the shoulds, right? Like I should be doing this, or you're doing something because you need to prove yourself. That's when it gets really unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I think the way I see it now is I think about this in terms of sustainable impact, right? And how can I
Okay.
make impact for the rest of my life? So with Embrace, yes, I did make impact, and it was amazing that we finally achieved our goal of 1 million babies this year. But at
Yeah.
what cost, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end of that 10-year period, it took me over a year and a half to just recover so I could work again. And I will never do that to myself again. That was, again, just like the worst place I've ever been in. And so, yes, you can burn bright, as I said, and burn out, or you can think about what is sustainable over the long run. And how do I keep doing things that are impactful for the rest of my life? And that might mean slowing down. in the moment,
Yeah.
right? But then
Yeah.
having a much longer runway to make that impact. And so for me, what I'm most excited about now is kind of I stepped down from Embrace after almost 20 years. I'm moving into leadership training and development, and I love this work so much because it gets to bring everything that I've learned from my healing journey, from my leadership journey, into helping people step into their most authentic selves, and then that has a ripple effect, right? And I think
Yeah.
about like what is happening in our world today with the current leadership of this country, or even in the corporate world, and you see a lot of leaders leading from this place of woundedness, right? And
Yeah.
when that happens, you're leading from fear, control, and ego, as opposed to love and purpose and compassion.
Yeah.
And you're making like decisions on behalf of so many people, right? That can be harmful to people when you aren't doing that inner work. And so this is why I think it's so imperative for us to do this work. And it's, as someone asked me, I gave a talk that was kind of combining Embrace and my healing journey recently. And they asked me afterwards, well, do you think you'll ever do anything as impactful as Embrace? And I said, are you kidding me? This next thing is way more impactful. Like I have more ambition on not just with Bape, but just like in a world level. I think I have more ambition, but the way I'm going to approach that is so different, right?
Yeah.
The way I'm going to approach that is from a place of balance and joy so that I can give my all to it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I had this, I went to a meditation retreat a few months before my book came out, and I had this most beautiful visual come up for me. And it was like this image of riding an endless wave and being so in touch with the ocean, in flow with all my elements. And I thought, that is what I want to do. And it's not about what I do, it's how I do it. And I want to do it from a place of joy and flow and ease, as opposed to this place of like contraction and striving and like never feeling like I'm enough, which only got me so far.
For everybody I know that has made this transition that you're talking about, they had to go through phase one. Like, and this, I guess, like, Richard Rohr would talk about it as first half of life, second half of life. There's a lot of different frameworks for this, but the ego building, then then the letting go.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to get to two without one?
You know what? I don't know, Kyle, but it's part of why I wrote this book and why I'm doing the work I'm doing, because I want to help people not have to go through that crash and burn and to be as awful as I did. I would love to prevent people from having to go through that. Right.
Yeah.
And if and so that's why I'm, again, so passionate about the work that I'm doing, because if you don't have to go there and you can learn these things and live a more balanced, healthy, joyful life, then, that's the best outcome. So I hope people don't have to go through.
Or maybe there's like you don't have to go so far down the step one, or I don't know. There's hopefully you can spend less time in that world.
Exactly. And the irony, just one last point on this is, and I sent you an article that I wrote about this today, but there's so much research. So this, I first read about this through Google's Project Aristotle, right? That looked at like reams and reams of data to understand what is the number one most important determinant of the highest functioning and most innovative teams. Right. And what they discovered was it wasn't like the skill set of the teams or the intelligence of the team members. It was psychological safety, right? The ability for each person to show up as their full selves and to take risks in that group without fear of failing, right? So that is the most important determinant of the highest functioning teams. But to leaders, my question is, how do you create this for your team if you don't have this within yourself? Right. And this is what.
And is it even possible?
Yeah.
It's probably not even possible.
Right. Because psychological safety isn't created through strategies and slogans and policies. It's set, in my belief, it is really set through the attitude of the leader. Right. And this is why for most of my life, I believed resilience was about pushing. If I was tired, work harder. Right. Just figure your way through it. And now I believe resilience is about self-compassion. Right. And it's actually slowing
down. Tell me more.
And treating ourselves with compassion, because when we have this inner sense of enoughness, right, then we can take risks and fail. And we get up and we brush ourselves off and we keep going because we know we're going to be okay. right? It's not going to like devastate you when you fail, right? So to have that safety, you have to have the inner safety to take those risks. And once you can model that, then it extends out to your team.
What do you wish, if you had one message to a early founder in their 20s, what would you want to say to them?
I mean, it's everything I've said in this podcast.
Like, just rerun everything we just said. Yeah.
Yeah, but that the inner work is the foundation of everything. Everything will stem from there, right? So pay attention, do the inner work. Do not ignore that, right? And that all the answers you're looking for out there, they are already within you. So how do you find that, right? And how do you have, again, this inner sense of enoughness, right? And that is the dedication in the book, actually. It's to the part of each of us that ever felt like we weren't enough. You are enough, just as you are. And I think, again, when we have that belief, then we have the fortitude to go out there and do all the things, and make that impact and do world-changing things. Because we can take risks and we can still have that self-love.
I think that's a good place to end it. I would love, so if folks are interested, they need to pick up the book, Like a Wave We Crash, Like a Wave We Break.
Like a Wave We Break,
right?
Yes.
So check that out. And it sounds like you're doing some coaching work.
Yes.
And if people want to find out more about that, where would they look?
Yes, they can look at my website, janemariechen.com. I'm doing coaching, both individual and workshops, leadership workshops at a group and corporate level. So I'm finding so much joy in doing that. Also, I have a resource page on my website for people who are interested in things like parts work. I've created a free exercise that folks can download and try on themselves. And I also have a research page that just has like all the different things I tried, the books I read. I want to share those tools with everyone else. So feel free to check it out there.
JaneMarieChen.com. Yeah. Excellent. Hey, super appreciate this time today. It was really lovely. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.